You are listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, don't give up.
Hello and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope, the podcast. I'm your host, Jana, and today we're here with Alisha Gee. Alisha believes that all areas of life are interconnected. Because of this, she focuses on teaching women how to improve in their personal lives, in their health, and in their relationships, and in their business endeavors. Alisha believes that now is a time for women to show up initially in all areas of their lives and to ditch the excuses. Through her program, Alisha is creating a movement of women ready for change, and she invites you to join. Alisha, I'm so glad you're here. I am like a super fan. If you guys don't have it already, by the time this comes out, Alisha is one of our writers in Best Holistic Life, and we loved her article. So thank you so much for being here, Alisha.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love what you are creating as well.
Thank you. Well, one of the things we ask everyone to do when they come on the show is to share a story of hope, because I believe our stories are literally the heartbeats that go out into the world and give hope and create change. And I'm hoping that this movement of hope creates a generational change so that one day when I'm not here, my great grandkids who I've never had the opportunity to meet are going to have this beautiful change in the world. So do you want to share your story of hope?
Yes, I love that. Yes, it is a generational thing that we're creating right now. So I want to start back with just my story, just so that you guys can see where I've come from since then. And also I know that a lot of you guys can relate to my specific story. I went through childhood sexual abuse from ages 11 to 13 years old. Before that, I had grown up in an amazing family where we traveled the world. We lived in China for 6 years, like had all these amazing things. My dad was a doctor. We were in the middle class. I like to share those things because I think oftentimes when we hear about abuse, we think it's like someone else's story, or we think that it only happens in certain demographics. But for me, things started to change when I was 11 years old with a Pacific family member. And when those things started to change, I went through this period of confusion, asking myself, like, did I do something to change this? Is it my fault? And of course, like, it led on to 2 years of him, manipulating me into thinking that it was my fault or no one would believe me. But really, like, when things started, that I thought looked up for me was when my mom had come to me and she said, "Hey, Alisha, like, I know what's going on, and I would love for you to share your side of the story on what happened." And as I shared my story, I was like actually in a pivot chair like this, like I couldn't stay still. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what the word sexual abuse meant. And so I shared with her what little I could. And I remember this moment like it was yesterday, because she looked at me and she said, "Alisha, it takes two." And in that moment, it, like, all of those doubts that I had that no one would believe me, all of those things, I was like, oh, it was my fault. I took that on as the truth. Because when someone close to you, and really like 67% of women aren't believed when they share their story of abuse for the first time. And so especially when it comes from your mom, of course you take that on. And so for years, I led my life like my life didn't matter. I was partying, drinking all the time. At that point, I started doing stuff with other guys. And that really lasted for like 16 years. Until one day I was working with girls who'd gone through sex trafficking after college, and I really felt connected, and I felt really grateful that my life didn't go down that road, that I was working with these girls. But of course, like, it was really hard hours. I wasn't getting paid that much. So I came home to my now fiance, and he said, "Alisha, you don't get to complain and make excuses for your life when you haven't helped yourself yet, and you continue to try to help everybody else around you." And so that was like my big moment of like, of course, at first I did not want to hear that. I was like, "I'm sorry, you don't know, I'm fine, I'm okay," because I had said that for so long. But in that moment, I realized, hey, no, I'm not okay. And that's okay. So what happened in that was really the part of like the hope is that it's okay not to be okay. That's a powerful moment to sit back and be like, hey, there's something not working here, and get curious and see what's still coming up for you. And so in that process, when I took a year off of working with them and focused on myself, I realized I'm like, I don't want to just have this change for myself. I want to be able to help other women. So that's really how I started my company, was realizing that, no, we don't get to just say that we're okay anymore. We get to be more than okay. We get to show up really powerfully for ourselves.
I love that. I think it's beautiful. Tell us like what it is you're doing now. How are you showing up and serving the world?
Yeah, so I started my own company called We Lift to Rise. It is growing and expanding because when We Lift to Rise was created, it was a fitness company because I believe fitness is one of the best ways to fight for yourself. Now I really do more of coaching with business owners and entrepreneurs who are showing up really powerful in their businesses, but not showing up personally for themselves. So I have a one-on-one coaching and a group coaching program for women who are really wanting to, ask more questions, get curious, figure out how to have it all, not just amazing business. Because that was my story. I was like all into my businesses. I was all into my fitness coaching. But even then I was like, there's more to life than just going all in there. Like, how do I have all 4 areas connected? And you mentioned those: fitness, business, personal life, and your relationships.
I love that. And a couple of things that you touched on that I want to like go back to, because there's a lot of people feeling this way. First of all, you're not alone, right? But how did you escape that destructive behavior and start honoring yourself with those platforms?
Yeah, honestly, it took me to realize that I got to stop using that as an excuse. And I want you to hear me like correctly on this. Like, yes, it was really hard what you've gone through. And all of us have gone through painful past experiences, whether it was abuse, whether it was bullying, neglect from a parent. Oftentimes we compare our stories to others. And so that it's your experience. And so it's valid. And it's not an excuse for showing up and not loving yourself and not going forward powerfully. And so when I realized that, I was like, hey, I don't just get to drink every night until I'm drunk. I don't just get to go for mediocre jobs. I don't just get to focus on my business and forget about my fitness and my health and all those things. That's really where I started to see the change in my life.
I think that is so beautiful. And for all of you who are listening, I think that it's really important that Alisha's touched on the fact that you're allowed to have all those feelings, right? That those are normal. It's like telling someone don't grieve the loss of a loved one. You're supposed to go through that process. It's what gives us our strength to move forward. It's what gives us the time, the thought process to get through that. Yeah. And so I love that you're saying that, but you can't live in that space. It can't be there for, I have people talking about things that happened 20, 30 years ago because they were never able to go through that process. Yeah. And so they just tap it down and it pops up and goes back down and pops up and they never get through it because they were never allowed to. It's like, we don't talk about that, get over it already. And they didn't go through that process of learning how to, absorb what happened, learning how to, like you were saying, escape the destructive behavior and learning to start honoring themselves and standing in their truth. What are some of the tips that you would give some women or men that are listening to us right now?
Yeah, like you said, what you resist persists. So if you haven't addressed something in your past, you get to say it out loud. You get to share it, definitely share it with somebody. And if they don't listen the first time, right, go to somebody else. Because sometimes we also get to give grace to people who don't know how to react the way that we need to. Like, for instance, my mom in the past, that was really painful. But I've had a lot of healing and forgiveness for her because, I don't know what she was going through. I don't know why she said that in that moment. And obviously she didn't mean to have that lasting impact on me. And so really like saying it out loud is what the first thing I would do. Find someone to share it with. The second thing is to really like realize like, hey, you are worth fighting for. And it's not always easy to go through a healing journey. It's not always easy to address these things, but it is also not easy to continue to stuff it down, right? And so it's like you get to choose your heart in that. And so realizing that like, first, say it out loud. You don't get to stuff it down. And then like the third thing I would just share is that you don't have to do life on your own. I know for many years I was like, well, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm okay. I don't need anybody. And so I lived my life like really excluded. I had like lots of different friend groups, never any friend groups that I would be really close to. So I'm like, I don't want them to actually ask how I'm doing, right? But you get to have friends that are there for you. You get to have coaches, mentors, people around you to do life with.
I love that. There is a difference between deep friends and superficial friends. The ones that are like, how are you? I'm fine. And the ones like, no, really, how are you? Like I feel like something's wrong. Yeah. And I'm here in case you're ready to talk. Yeah. One of the things that you said is telling someone is very scary, no matter what it is, that you maybe have an addiction disorder or you did something that just isn't sitting right with you and you just need to talk to someone. I will tell you, when you first tell someone, please don't hold them responsible for their initial response, because that's a process too. They love you, but they're processing, and sometimes things come out of their mouth that they haven't quite processed yet. And so don't like go back in your shell. Just take a breath and say, I see that you still need to process this. And understand, because I know that I am a speaker. And so immediately words come out of my mouth, which is literally my thought process coming out of my mouth, not what's really going on in my head or my heart. And it takes me a minute to step back and embrace what that is in your journey and love that. So if someone says, oh, don't tell anyone that, like, you don't want people to know that, or that should be your secret, and, just get through it. Don't get scared of telling people. Give them a minute to absorb it. Like, you've had time to absorb it and get to that point where you can talk. Give them a minute to absorb it and wrap themselves around it, right?
So important. And exactly like you said. And so for people who are on the other end, they've been hearing people's stories or maybe don't know how to react. Yeah, just be like, hey, thank you for sharing that with me. I need a second to really let that sink in. I don't have that same experience, so I don't understand. I'm not really comprehending. You don't have to say something right away, right? Oftentimes, the first thing that comes to our mouth. And also, like, a lot of times those, like, hey, don't tell anybody, like, because that's embarrassing or whatever, because they probably have had something in their life where their parent or somebody had told them that, and they're projecting that on you. And so that's not your burden to carry. Like you said, step back and be like, okay, look, obviously they're saying that because they've had that happen to them, or for some reason that they thought that was a correct response. It's not about hating on them. That doesn't help your healing journey. And on that point, the reason why I don't share specifically who is my abuser is because I know so often we go towards hating those people who have hurt us in the past. Even if you hear my story and I tell you who it is, I've had this experience where people go and Google him, Facebook, like, try to find him and hate on him. And the truth is, like, that doesn't do anything for your healing journey. You get to focus on yourself and where you're at. And so that's why I just never really share the specific person until we're in, like, a one-on-one setting, that kind of thing. Because there is some power in letting people know I can relate in that specific way. But yeah, it's about, like, realizing it's your journey. Not everyone's going to understand your healing journey.
Alisha, first of all, thank you for saying that, because it is super important for you to understand what that anger and hatred goes out. That's an energy that is going to make you ill. It's going to age you. It's just a toxic. And when I talk about forgiveness, people think, well, I'm not sorry. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. It's for you to say, I'm not agreeing with you, but I forgive you because I want to move on. I want to let it go and not take that toxic feeling with me. So, like, forgive for yourself, be super selfish and forgive a lot, because you're worth letting that go. So that was a hard lesson for me to learn, because I have black and white, right? It's either right or wrong. There's no middle. And if they don't see that, then it's like, it was horrible for me to be able to let go. But I learned that it wasn't for them. That was for me to move forward in my life and to let it go. And that was the most freeing thing I ever learned in my life, was that forgiveness was for me. And I'm super selfish with it. I give it everywhere.
Yeah. And but that's so amazing, because really the truth is that oftentimes, we get in this, like, hard-headedness, and we're like, well, they're still not saying sorry. Or sometimes we don't ever even get to go back and talk to the people, whether they passed away, whether, like, it just is not possible to talk to them again. Again, it's not because of them that you're forgiving them. It's because you get to have an amazing life after painful past experiences. We're not meant to just, like, continue in this, like, hatred and exactly like you said, it affects your whole body. Like with my mom, for a long time, I was like, well, she hasn't changed yet. And I was like, I'm not going to forgive her. And I just realized and I don't even care, but the truth is I did care. It kept on coming up and coming up and coming up. And yes, I tried to resist it for a long time, but I was like, okay, what is it about my mom that continues to have, like, pull at my heartstrings / like, be in my life? And I was like, the unforgiveness part. I haven't been able to forgive her up until about a year or two ago. And it was the most freeing experience of my life. And it affected every area of my life, like my relationship now with my fiance, my health, my fitness, all of it.
By the way, you bring up a really good point. If we're carrying around all of these whatever the little traumas are, they could be little traumas, big traumas. A trauma is a trauma, no matter how big or how small it is. It's something that you need to work through. And if you're carrying that on through life, it's going to carry into your personal relationships with, the person that you find to live with. That's why sometimes the people we stay married to are the ones we married later in life, because we figured it out, right? We figured out about letting it go and being more accepting and forgiving and all that great stuff. When we're young, we're pretty like, well, I don't have to, forgive you. What's in it for me, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's super important that you brought that up, that it affects our health. It will affect our relationships, and your relationship after being able to get to that space, even with your fiance, it's so much better. And we're always evolving. We're always going to get better. We're always going to have that light bulb come on that says we could do more for ourselves, right? We could be better. So I love that you're talking about that. You were talking about a couple of the tips, and one of them was to talk about it with someone, find someone that you can share it with when you get to that space. Getting those words out, I'm telling you, for people, I have a family member who just came out to us, and I'm not going to mention their name because that's their job to tell people. But for a year of her waiting to tell us, I saw her like disappear. She wasn't the bubbly person we knew. She was withdrawn. Like, it was sad seeing it happen. But then when she told us, the light bulb went on, and she's back to her happy, giggly self, because she internalized that they won't look at me the same. They won't love me. They'll judge me. All these things come up. And I know that you're thinking that when you have a trauma that you want to get out and start working through that. How are they going to receive that? Are they going to not talk to me? Are they going to not love me anymore? Are they going to see me differently? I will always see you differently when you deal with the trauma. I will see you as strong and brave and standing up for yourself. So yes, I will always see you differently, but the love doesn't change, right? As a matter of fact, it probably gets bigger when you see, like, I get it now, why that year would look so dark for you. And you should have just come to us right away. And I'm sorry that our door didn't seem so open to you, but it is always open to you. And by the way, we said the wrong things at the beginning.
Yes.
Are you sure?
Exactly. And the reason why I think a lot of times we have those feelings that people aren't going to accept us, or they're going to think we're broken or whatever else, is because society really pictures women who've gone through abuse as broken, as like just okay. And a lot of organizations, and I know they don't do this purposefully, but a lot of the sex trafficking organizations I've worked at, they get these women and girls to this point of being okay. And I just think that, like, we're meant for so much more than okay. We're meant to, like, thrive. And so society doesn't really picture that. And so when you share it with somebody, and I can relate to that in the sense of, yes, sharing my story for the first time, but with friends and family. But when I shared my story publicly, I was like, well, I don't want to be labeled as a girl who's gone through abuse. And I had this, like, negative connotation on that. But when I really started to think about it, and for one, I asked myself, I'm like, if I could share my story with one person and it impacted one person, would it be worth it? And I said, yes. And that's how I started sharing my story. But after that, when I realized, I'm like, people are all going to know about it, my friends, my family, people that I don't know, I was like, well, they're going to think I'm broken. They're going to think I'm just, like, talking about it just to talk about it. All these things. But the truth is, I get to come up with the reason why I'm doing this. I get to self-proclaim, like, who I am and how powerful it's made me going through these things. It hasn't made me, like, broken. One of my quotes is that your painful past experiences can also be your most powerful things that you get to share with this world. And I truly, truly, like, believe in that.
I love that. I think those journeys are given to us for this exact reason, so that we can get through it, take whatever we've learned and put that out into the world. Because what if there's a young girl listening right now, she hasn't talked, to anyone, or even someone in their 20s or 30s, and they haven't told anyone, they're carrying it around. Their life feels hectic outside because of this one thing that they can't release. And your story hits that little heart chord to them. And they think, maybe I can tell someone, maybe I can reach out, and get this out of the way. And another thing you said that was so amazing is we shouldn't be, like, trying to just exist and be happy for just existing. Everything's just okay. We should be thriving. We deserve that. And don't let any of those traumas hold you back, because you are worthy of having the most beautiful life and finding love for whoever you are. So I just think that you're amazing. How do people get more involved with you, or join your community, or even like connect with you. Maybe they have a story and you're the person they want to share it with.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to be that person, and honored to be that person, because it's a big deal, like you said, to share your story. And again, you get to find safe people in that. And so, yes, like I hope you know that I am a safe person in that. But to get really more connected, I have a Facebook group called Stand Up and Stand Out Women. That's a really amazing group where I usually post like every day, do lives, just different things. And I honestly, like, I'm going through a period myself where I'm like learning and growing so much in my own self. And I share vulnerably and openly where I'm at, because I never want people to feel like, oh, Alisha can do it, but I can't. Right. And so I'm like, I still have these daily struggles. I still have these confident things that I get to work through. But every time like a trigger comes up for me or anything comes up for me, I know that it's like another place that I get to go. Triggers for me are actually like a really powerful tool to be like, hey, that's still bothering me. Okay, great. Feel it out. Let yourself feel that. And then how can you work through that? And when you have a trigger, you're ready to show up for it. So that's a lot of things that I share in that group. But also, like, I really share powerful tools on how to have it all. Like I said, like I work with business owners, and I know that for myself as well, I was like, well, I'm going to help everybody else in my business. I'm going to coach everybody else. And last year, especially during COVID, I started to slip on my fitness, right? I started to be like, well, I don't have enough hours in the day. I can work out later. But the truth is, like, I get to show up for myself first, and then I get to serve everybody else. Like, we're not called to be like martyrs. I think oftentimes, like, after going through painful past experiences, you're like, I want to help everybody, but you sacrifice yourself in the process. And so in that Facebook group, I also just really share tools on how to have a daily practice of loving on yourself, how to start your day powerfully, all those things. So that's a really powerful way to get connected with me. Yes, I have my one-on-one programs, group programs you can ask me about, but really, like, if you just want to share your story, I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well, and I would love to hear from you.
I love it. We're going to have all of Alisha's links in the show notes so you can easily find her. And this is the whole reason we wanted her to talk, because we think her story is so powerful, and her message that it's going to be a generational change when we start learning it's okay to find our voice. And it's okay, like, that the first response out of people is something scary. It's okay. Give them time to process. I mean, I can't say that enough, because I don't want you going back into your shell because one person said the wrong thing, because we'll say the wrong thing. Yes. But that doesn't change the fact that we love you and support you.
Yes, exactly. I love that.
I love it. Thank you so much, Alisha, for being with us today. I just absolutely adore you. I've been stalkering you a little bit on social media. You're doing an amazing job.
So good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show. That'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.